All right, welcome again to another episode of Andor as Art. My name is Luc Travers, and I am here with my good friend Daphne Anders. She is a screenwriter, a playwright, working in theater in Vienna, and she's joining me to discuss Andor Season 2, episodes 7 through 9. Um, Couple of little quick announcements. I've been enjoying these episodes so much, and I'm planning on not only completing the season, but possibly also doing an episode on Rogue One after the end of the season to see how Rogue One ties in to Cassian's story. Um, Daphne, I'd like to start maybe with your relationship to the show Andor, what your feelings are about it, and then after that, we'll get into our impressions of this particular arch of episodes, or tranche of episodes, or arc of episodes, whatever it is, it's chapter 7 through 9 that has been so well received. I've been seeing, especially 8 and 9, and then we'll share some of our particular highlights that we have. Oh, I also have a bunch of questions that I might want to ask about what's going on in the show, confusions I have. And then after that, we'll kind of get into like the deeper ideas, the conflicts that are coming into the show. And then we'll wrap up with some of our thoughts about what might happen next or questions for the final 3 episodes of the show. So, Daphne, what do you think of Andor?
I think of Andor in only positive ways. I think I look at it through several lenses. So I've been enjoying also your content on it, and I noticed also while I was watching now also the last 3 episodes that just my mind was constantly looking out for important words or philosophical thoughts and themes in a way that I'm really not used to with even high grade serial content these days. So that's really exciting from that perspective. Also, as a screenwriter, the show got me really enthusiastic just about the craft. It's so well done. And yeah, just seeing every event being dictated by people's choices being caused and leading to more people making more choices is just empowering to watch as a person. You get all these intelligent people in important situations, and also, yeah, as a writer, because that's really what we're all always told to aim at as an aesthetic principle. I really like the realism of
Mm,
Andor, just as a broad aesthetic thing that I notice all the time. It really, I think I tweeted somewhere, I like how un-Star Warsy it is. It's
mhm,
not
mhm,
it doesn't refer to Star Wars, but to reality, to history, to the way that revolutions and resistance movements work, and that's just palpable in all the little problems and the big problems that people face. I noticed it when we watched Bix struggle after she was tortured and her psychological struggle. All these and in a million other ways, in the way that the Empire is depicted, not just as some blatantly evil force, but in this really nuanced way.
mhm.
Um, yeah, and yeah, so in just a million different ways, I really like the show.
It's great, and I'm really glad to have you to chat about this, especially because you're going to I'm anticipating you're going to be listening and sharing some of these observations about the way that the story progresses, the screenplay aspect of it, and maybe the dialogue that goes along with it. You mentioned the realism of it and the the nuance of of what the evil of the empire is like, or the fact that it's the story that Tony Gilroy's writing is not referring back to other Star Wars properties. It's referring to history. And for those who in the audience who are interested, the last episode that we had my friend Lanka, who lives in the country of Georgia, who is going under some tremendous political difficulties there with Russia having a heavy hand in the politics there. And so we spent some time thinking a bit about the political and historical parallels to what is going on in the world and what has been going on in the world with Andor, and also thinking of how how we might personally connect to the characters as well. Um, so I want to dive into now this particular section of episodes 7 through 9, and we've got one more batch of episodes after this. So this is kind of like the prelude to the climax. And um, I want to hear a little bit, Daphne, about how you overall you felt about this particular batch of episodes, maybe compared to the others, maybe where they are in the flow of this season. Also, I'm curious about how this season and these episodes in season 2 maybe compared to season 1, but just in general, did you enjoy episodes 7 through 9?
I enjoyed this batch particularly more even than the preceding ones of season two. I felt that actually the first word that comes to mind is just epic, which is strange because a whole episode takes place in almost only one place, episode 8, right? Which is all on Gorman. So it doesn't have some big, I don't know, tidal waves of ships racing against tidal waves of ships. It's not epic in that sense, but it has this huge, this just devastating, drastic, tragic event, the Gorman massacre. And that just proves it sharpens our perception, I think, of every single character, because everyone is confronted with this, with the reality of what they're up against in a way that they haven't been before. Uh, and just the way they behave around and in this massacre, I think provided the whole thing with just a really epic quality, or like it sharpened the drama and the characters in I think a really profound way.
All right, so epic, and that's interesting that you're describing it that way because it does. I like that contrast. It's not like lots of battles going on all over the galaxy all at one
Mm.
time. It's all taking place on the plaza in Palmo, and then that resonates to other things, and that leads to what Mon Mothma does in the Senate in episode 9.
Mm.
Um, and that's also interesting because this batch of episodes, a lot of it felt like you, epic for me and social. And in the last batch of episodes, my thought was that the conflict was narrowing down more towards like Cassian versus Luthen, or Cassian
Mm.
kind of a little bit versus Bix, and more. Okay, we've have this big. The revolution is mushrooming, it's blossoming, and now it all comes back to, okay, what is your role in it, and what role do you want to have in it? And Cassian is questioning the methods of Luthen and questioning what really matters to him. But here it seems to spread back out, makes it social again. Um, so, uh, some general thoughts from me. This is the first time, this batch of episodes was the first time that I was starting to realize, you know what, I need to calibrate a little bit the way I'm watching the show. That it's not season 1, and that I'm watching not a very different kind of show, but a different kind of storytelling than season 1. And I remember I wrote an article kind of, okay, reviewing season 2 by taking the lessons from watching season 1 and here's some guidance on how to watch season 2. And there's a lot that still applies, but there's some things that I'm realizing, okay, I shouldn't expect, I should expect some different kinds of things in season 2. And the main thing is that um, in season 1, there was more of a step-by-step domino progression of events that flow from each other from the first episode to the last. And here, I finally come to accept, okay, I'm going to have huge gaps of time where dominoes have fallen that I have not seen fall. So at the end of the last arc of episodes, I am so into the conflict between Cassian versus Luthen, and I want to see how that turns out. And then we kind of get how that turns out and their views on Gorman, but it's a bit of exposition by Wilmot at the beginning, who says, yeah, you know
Mm.
what? Gorman is now really, it's not just something that Luthen wants to blow up and burn brightly. It's actually something that the Empire is really, really doing something evil here. And so we got to fight it. So a lot of my expectations for how the story is going to proceed have to be readjusted. And I've got to realize, and I've heard described, and Tony Gilroy has described it this way, that we're getting 4 movies. And each movie is inserting you into a new kind of story with a new emphasis and a new theme. Now, not a completely out of the blue theme, but it's like a symphony orchestra where you have one melody that's going to be accentuated and played as the main theme, and the other things are still there, but they're kind of like, there's the oboe in the background who's playing a little bit, or the bassoon or whatever, and it's you can barely hear it, and it's accentuating something. Everything that we're seeing in these episodes, in these 7 through 9, have been echoed not just in season 2 so far, but earlier in season 1. But they haven't been emphasized. So there's certain ideas that are really emphasized here that I was like caught me by surprise. Oh, that's where you're going. But the more I think about it, it's like, oh, okay, I can see why you're going in that direction, and that feels like a natural outgrowth, a natural thematic outgrowth, if not a natural plot development outgrowth. So sometimes I feel, okay, I've got to like things are on fast forward, and when you're getting a lot of exposition and with the beginnings of the episodes, you're like wondering, processing, okay, what's going on? Where are we? What is the playing field now? What? There's a rebel base in Yavin, but I thought there wasn't going to be one. I thought the rebellion was still like, trying to get things across and like shooting each other on planets, and they don't get along. But now they've got to, all right, okay, so stuff has happened since then. And are we here now that there is a rebel base? What does that say about what the story is interested in now? So I'm starting. It's funny that now I'm finally getting used to the storytelling method of season 2, and then we just got one more batch of episodes. There's one more thing I want to say about this. I mentioned to you before we got on, Daphne, that I I have so many questions about parts that I'm confused by, that I feel like I there is a reason here, or there is some connection, or there is some explanation, or there's a line that's delivered that's meant to say something very deep, but I don't. It's gone over my head, and I've watched these episodes 3 times, and what the faith that I have, I'll call it that, the confidence that I have in this show, and this is built on from season 1 and in everything from season 2, is that I am not going to say, oh, I didn't get this, so there's something wrong in the storytelling. I love it that I can say, I didn't get this, but if I think about it, something is going to click into place because of what is in the story. I'm going to make some connection that has been set up, that is there. I'm going to recall some moments prior that this is us, that this is connecting to, and it's going to give me that satisfaction, like, oh yeah, that's right. That clicking moment of clarity is all there. I've got to work harder for it than so many other works of literature that I've spent time with. But I love the feeling that if I put the work in, if I'm conscious about it, I'm going to figure it out. And the way I've been doing these episodes, and the way I've been thinking, and the way I've been having these discussions, is without looking at deeper analysis. Now, there isn't much great deep analysis out there, but there's one podcast that I like, the House of R, which does a deep dive on the Andor episodes. And what they do is after several days, they accumulate information from the interviews with the director and the stars. They accumulate all the theories that have been garnered. So they let things percolate and draw from kind of all the information available to try to make sense of things. And the way I like to go about it is I want to draw from just the show and my experience, or in conversation with other people and their experience of the show. And this, Daphne, is what I'm excited about in talking with you. It's like answering some of these particular questions. I'd like to share those questions with you in a moment, but first, I'd love to hear any particular highlights that you have from those episodes. Anything that you were like, oh my God, I love this, or I teared up here, or I laughed out loud here. What comes to mind for you for that?
Yeah, surprisingly, my least favorite characters interested me the most in these 3 episodes. So Cyril and Dedra, and what happened there, and Cyril's change of character and his fate afterwards, I found so interesting. and surprising, and just also the scenes between them. It was specifically when Cyril confronts Dedra and the choking scene, which is then captivating in and of itself. Yeah, that was a definite highlight. Some other highlights. So that one is attached with the question to the scene where Bix brings Cassian to a force healer. I'm
Mhm.
also like that's a minor question on my mind, but something that I'm looking out for is what does the force mean in Tony Gilroy's execution of the Star Wars universe? And we might have gotten a small insight there, and the scene was just interesting as well. Um, yeah, I noticed there's one arc, a teeny arc of lines that are repeated throughout the three episodes in specific moments, is people thanking each other. I don't know if that's actually maybe something that also happened in the episodes before, but I noticed it in these three episodes
Any
that
particular
um,
moment of thinking?
yeah, so the first one was the Force healer thanking
Mhm.
Cassian, just absorbing his person and thanking him for all that he's been gathering and just
Mhm.
his strength of spirit in general. And that reflected, that's what, I mean, also your discussion of the theme of these circles and people being uplifted by each other. And yeah, it's even still like a remnant of the season one, the main theme there. That's what made that line stand out. And I noticed that, yeah, uh, in then episode 8, um, Cassian thanks Sam after Sam kills the droid who was about to kill him, Cassian. And it's just it stands out a little bit also because of the editing. Like it's a very clear little
Mhm.
like this was a beat that happened and that we absorb it. Yeah, it doesn't get drowned out. And that's interesting because Sam was yeah, this
Wait,
is sort of
tell
him.
us. Sam was what?
Well, he was responsible for Cinta's death,
Yeah.
so I don't think that there's a whole karmic agenda going on there, but it's at the very least a neat little aesthetic moment, if not more. And then later, in the next episode, after Cassian saves Mon and gets her out of the
Yeah.
Senate safely, she says she doesn't know, she's not sure how to thank him, and his answer is make it worth it. Yeah, so there seems to be some deep connection between the merit of the rebellion and your yeah, and just justice in a deeper sense and gratitude towards others. Yeah, that was an interesting little bit there that I enjoyed observing throughout.
Cool. And
Yeah.
I've got thoughts and questions about all those scenes of choking. Wow, that was so um so filled with like passionate rage on his part. Um the the use of the force. What? The force is here and what does it mean? And so I've got questions that we can discuss about that and the role that plays in Cassian's life, and to what extent it's going to play a role in his life, and the thanking part. And one of my highlights was like you, the Mon Mothma thanking Cassian at
Mm,
the end, and that caught me a little bit by surprise because it is so deeply sincere on her part. And, she doesn't think, we don't see her thanking Luthen or Clea or Erskine, her attendant. She is thanking Cassian. And one question that I was kind of confused by that. Why is she thanking Cassian? And maybe we'll get to that. But I really like that you're connecting it back to the gratitude that Force Healer has for Cassian. And they're both thanking Cassian for what he's doing, for
mm,
the Force Healer showing this tremendous gratitude, and for Mon Mothma for saving her and maybe something more. But it's putting emphasis on Cassian. Like, Cassian, you're doing something special. Okay,
mm,
so a few scenes for me, just tiny moments that got me emotional. One in the moment, but also in retrospect, it really, really, really hit me is when that force healer asked Bix, okay, how long have you known him? And Bix says, I don't remember a time that I didn't.
That was such a good line. I wrote that out for myself as well.
And
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, okay, that's a bit of exposition that's been withheld about their relationship for 21 episodes or however many, 19. And it comes at the perfect time to make this moment really powerful. She loves him. And it also comes at a moment where after, some people, the force healer says something about people. Usually I see people that are shaped by their past, and he keeps moving forward, gathering up new spiritual energy along the way. And so we both get how deeply connected Bix is to Cassian. They are childhood friends, childhood kindred spirits, and also how much she is a part of his past. And that's going to set up later on her decision that she needs to leave because
Mm.
there's too much attachment there. But that was such a poignant line. Um, another, one moment that caught me by surprise, and watching it, I wish I had more of an initial strong reaction. Was the moment um, when Cyril is pointing the gun at Cassian, and
Mm.
Cassian says, "Who are you?" And Cyril pauses and stops, and that was one moment like, "Oh wow, what just happened? I'm not quite sure what happened," and and I still feel that's one of my questions. I still feel like I'm not quite sure what's going through Cyril's mind when he kind of lowers the gun a little bit and he's like contemplating this question that Cassian has just asked him. But that's a moment that it's been building up the whole of their juxtaposition of characters. Cyril versus Cassian kind of paired together, and these two kind of, all right, one is growing in the Empire and one is growing in the rebellion. And now they finally clash, and now there's this question that hangs between the two of them. And what does it mean? And in the moment, I wish I knew more of what it meant. And I think I know a little bit more, but still, I'd like to discuss that.
Mm.
Two more moments after the Gorman massacre, and Cassian is driving away, and suddenly we hear the radio. Come on, we hear he's listening to the radio, and I don't recognize the voice at first, but then I said, "Oh, that's Drina," and it's this desperate plea to anyone out there. Listen, anybody that still has believes in truth, that has faith in truth, listen to this message. We're being massacred. Listen to this message and pass it on. And it's after the horror that we just saw, the desperation of that plea, realizing then it's Drina, a character we've grown to like, that also we connected to Wilmon. And then we see Cassian listen to this and reacting and having that tear come down. But that moved me. That plea, that was just this crackling voice in the distance who's trying to get the word out. Uh,
Yeah, it was such a paradoxical, like that really hit home for me as well. Because at the same time it followed just this terrible, terrible event. And it was the only thing she could ask for is mark the message and pass it along, which seems so weak. Like, just speak about this. In a sense, it's so immaterial. But while watching it, I remember having the distinct impression like this is genuinely the only and the most vital thing that can happen right now. So that was sort of such a moving contrast. Yeah.
oh, and speaking of moving contrasts, now everybody's loving Mon Mothma's speech to the Senate, and I think it's so absolutely deserved. And there's one particular moment because you've got the tension, like the contrast between she's giving this speech that's going to jeopardize her life, but is going to vitalize the rebellion and all those who give such a morale boost to all those who want to fight the Empire. But she's also going to be put in danger, and she's got to escape the Senate right after. But the line that got me, and maybe I might watch out, Daphne. I might even read at some point the whole of her speech. But the line that got me, it
Yeah.
said, "Oh my goodness, I'm paying attention to the speech," was when she says, "I believe we're in a crisis," and she says this line: "The distance between what is said and what is known to be true has become an abyss." And she has that hand gesture. The distance has become an abyss, and I'm knowing right now, okay, oh, there is something that is important here, that she's going to talk about the nature of truth and your orientation to reality, and how now I see, okay, how this arc of episodes are tied together. And um, I want to talk more about that, about what she describes as this objective truth that we're losing, and that becomes the defining evil of the Empire, the ability to destroy objective truth. Okay, so those are some particular highlights, and there's more, but that's what resonated with me, and I'm glad to hear what resonated with you, and I think that gives us some like points to reference. Um, Daphne, I'm wondering if maybe we take on like one character arc at a time, and then I kind of ask the questions of those character arcs, and then we can discuss wherever you'd like to go with that. But I'm imagining there's you've got the Cyril and Dedra area. You've got, I think, the Mon Mothma versus the Senate, and Luthen versus Luthen area. And
Mm.
and I think what might be, and this surprised me, the the main conflict of this arc. Now, of course, like there's the Empire versus Gorman and all that. The main conflict, Cassian versus Bix. I see you
Yeah.
nodding a little bit there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was there are many questions on all the fronts, but on the last one in particular, yeah.
and so I'm just going to pose these questions out loud. I've
Mm.
got three main ones here. And these are questions that kind of go through the whole arc, and then we can go into um, any part of the story, whether it's the Force portion, or Cassian and Gorman, or Cassian and Mon Mothma. Oh gosh, I forgot to make that highlight. I was looking forward to Cassian meeting Mon Mothma and what they would say to each other. And the first words they have were actually so perfect. I didn't realize it in the watching of it. I was wondering, it caught me as surprised what they were saying to each other. But then, in retrospect, it was so perfect. Okay,
What were
we'll
the
get to.
first words?
I'll get to that. I'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay. All
Okay,
right. So
wow.
I love setting teases up. Okay. So Cassian's questions I have. Cassian gets really upset at this force healer, and Bix getting him to go to the force healer, and then hearing about it, uh and my question is, why does Cassian get so upset at the
Mm.
thought, not just at the force healer, but then at the deeper thought that he has been told, and that Bix believes that he has a destiny. The force healer tells him he's a messenger. He's unlike anybody else I've seen, and I can kind of see he's got a purpose and a role, and Bix is buying into that. And he doesn't want to hear this at all. No. So why is he so upset about this force influenced destiny that has been shown to him? So that's one question. I'm still kind of confused by. Second one is, so Cassian, after he comes back from Gorman, he tells Clea that he's done. And he says the line to her, well, Clea says, wait, you're done with all of it? Or why are you done? What's going on? And Cassian says to her, Luthen will understand. And I'm like, wait. Okay, all right. You mean I don't understand? I want to know, what does he mean when he says Luthen will know why you want to be done? So that brings me to the big overall question in general. Why does Cassian want to be done? Why does he want to quit? when he's been so dedicated the whole time. Now he tells Bix later on, "This is all I need. You and me together. Let's go off to a part of the galaxy where this is not touching. I've done my part. Let's go away." But why? Why does he want this? This feels like it's a conflict that he had before. Like, didn't he already get over this? Didn't he join the rebellion already? Why is he having this conflict about leaving the rebellion now for somebody he cares about? So I'm still kind of confused by that. All right. So Daphne, wherever you'd like to go with Cassian and
Yeah. It's interesting. You just sort of leveled an accusation at Cassian there that Luthen also said, but in the previous batch of episodes, where he says, "What like is that your giving me everything thing? You're
yeah.
still attached to Bix and all that." And I think the difference there is in season one, it was all about Cassian alone and his willingness to then ultimately sacrifice himself and put himself into Luthen's scheme as an agent, as anything, whatever, just to be part of it. And now this, yeah, no, I think his attachment to Bix is a new theme, is a new challenge for him to overcome. It's you ask why? Why does he say this is all we need? This at the end, this is what we have here now. I don't know how to analyze that further, except for that is a new larger value that arose for him sort of as a lesson also after season one, and that he hasn't learned to question, learned to overcome yet at that point. So it seems like yeah, you were talking about circles and the connections people have to each other, and I wonder while watching what will ultimately be the message that or the thought that arises from the story about the relationship of justice and the rebellion and these connections that we have to people. And it seems that right now the view that or yeah, the sense that Cassian is bringing forward is it's either or. I now I don't want the rebellion anymore, so that I can have the connection with Bix, so that I can have this relationship, and I need to abandon the rebellion. I'm done with it because I want to value this. And there have been many points of conflict, like the relationship between Cinta and Bell in the last batch, where exactly these two things were in conflict. And I'm wondering as I'm watching this whether the answer, or yeah, ultimately that arises to that is some more complex relationship between those two terms. But yeah, that's how I see Cassian's situation now. I don't know how the Force ties into this. So I think we've only gotten a very light. So Tony Gilroy has been very, very modest in how much he introduces the Force throughout all of Andor, and I don't think we have enough yet to have a very, very clear idea of what's being shown to us there. But I noticed a dialogue that was interesting where Bix really urges Cassian after they see that his wound is healing after his encounter with the healer. And she goes, let it in. It can only be good. There's no other reason. And this let it in. I'm wondering what is it that he is unwilling to let in. So this new way of thinking about things that also has to do somehow with him being the messenger, which is also just yeah something that's important throughout with like spreading the word about Gorman and being a messenger and being someone who's powerful enough to face the atrocities and to survive and to then spread the word again, be the messenger. I'm wondering if that's all part of one thought that's arising there.
I think I agree with that. The let it in is let in the fact that you have a broader purpose, a deeper purpose. You have a destiny.
Yeah,
And
that's interesting. I do think that or what Andor has taught me to expect so far, sort of tying
yeah,
into what you said earlier about that this is a work we can trust to uphold certain things. And I haven't had this sort of destiny, fate theme ring through Andor yet. More the
Not at
contrary,
all.
because
Not at
people have
all.
been making choices and getting into and out of situations by their choice, and choices they make in that moment and that go against what they did before. So I'm thinking there's, yeah, that this messenger. That's why I'm hesitant to speak of destiny, just because that's laden with these associations that go against what we see here. But maybe, yeah, some new notion of purpose and mission.
I'm going to use the word
Yeah.
destiny, and the
Okay.
discomfort that you have right there with it is a discomfort that I have, and I think it's a discomfort that Cassian has. Okay, so these are the questions I laid out. Okay, why does Cassian want to break up with the rebellion and be with Bix, and what does the Force have to do with it? So okay, I'll propose thoughts here. Let me know what you think. Um, there is a line that Cassian repeats several times.
I know exactly which line you're going to say. Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
I want to make my own decisions. I want to be in control of my choices. And that's what he tells to Clea when she's like, "What? I know you don't you want to break up with a rebellion. You're tired. You're sad. You're upset." And he says, "I need to make my own choices." And he says that a couple of other times. He tells that just offhand to that rebel rebellion leader who's trying to get him to like, hey, check in with your flight. You can't just come and go as you wish. And he says to him, okay, if I can't do what I want, then I'm gone, basically. And there's another point at which he says that but this sense that I think I think we're evolving because at the end of the last three episodes, I was totally thinking, okay, it's Bix versus the rebellion. What's his priority for him?
Mm.
And I'm wondering if in this tranche of episodes we're seeing a slightly different take on that. It's still coming out as that Bix versus rebellion, and he makes a choice for Bix. This is what he needs. All he needs. But I'm wondering if he wants to retain this agency, this I'm choosing things. And
Mm.
the reaction that he has to the force healing thing is being told, you have a destiny. And if he's being told that, then no, don't tell me what my destiny is. Don't tell me to stay into space. Don't tell me to keep fighting for the rebellion. I got to decide for myself on things to do. So I'm wondering if we've just been introduced to the idea of somebody being told that they're the promised one, a promised one, and reacting against it because they still want to hold their destiny in their own hands.
Mm.
And I think that's what Bix is trying to tell him when she says, "Let it in. It can only be good." And he's resistant. And I'm wondering, and I'm thinking if that's where his desire, his deeper desire for telling Luthen and Clea, "I'm done with it," is coming from. It's not his love for Bix. It's not his attachment for Bix, but his resistance to being pushed in a certain direction and to being prescribed a life, and his desire to hold on to that, his free will. Um,
Eh.
and that's so. There are where, three instances where people are telling him, maybe there's something more that you've been, this is your destiny here. There is the Force healer. There is Bix who believes the Force healer. And then there is also Luthen. When Luthen and he have the conversation right before he's going to go save, when
Mm.
Cassian's going to save Mon Mothma, Luthen or Cassian is saying, "Hey, Luthen, are you going to get out of here? You're going to get caught if you stay here." And Luthen says, I'm going to get hanged. I know my destiny. In fact, you and I both, we made this calculation when you joined us that we are going to die for the rebellion. We're going to die for it." And Cassian says, "That's not going to happen to me. That's not the way I view it." And Luthen then says, "Sometimes I wonder. I wonder because you came right at the point I needed you." And
Mm.
then he lists all the different planets where there have been these events that Cassian has been a part of. It goes through, there was Aldani, there was Ferrex, there was Narkina, there was Cienar, there was Mino Rao. Can I name all the planets? There was Gorman, and all these. Luthen himself, I think he might be force sensitive, but I think he's sensing you have had this kind of journey where you say you've been making your own choices because that's what Cassian is saying. I've been making my own choices. Maybe you have not necessarily been making your own choices, but you've been going down a path. And Cassian doesn't like that, of course. But I think that what's building up here is here's a hero with a promised one, and at this moment he wants to resist it. And the way he's resisting it is I want to retain the choice. And the choices that are up to him are rebellion or Bix. And he wants to his choice for Bix is not primarily because he loves her, but because he is resisting being imposed a destiny. All right, that's my theory.
So where does the destiny come from? His real purpose, if not from fate or some higher instance, because we haven't just seen
and
that.
I think this shows that I think we've been introduced to mysticism in the show. I think this is the manifestation of the Force. I think this is the Force guiding him to, and this gets into Rogue One, which I'm not going to really get into, to the outcome in Rogue One, I'm going to say. And the specific thing that the fourth hero says, you're a messenger, gives him kind of this purpose that then we see fulfilled later on. And so now I think for the first time I'm seeing the TV series Andor really looking at its endpoint and driving us there and making us think about the endpoint by saying we know where it's going to end, and Cassian is being told that this whole story of his is actually leading up to that point, just as we know it's going to end up there. But for Cassian, and he's resisting that. He doesn't want to know that that's there. But I think we're getting a King Arthur story or however other many stories where you've been told, Harry Potter story. You're the chosen special one to do something that's going to defeat the evil.
So what strikes me is that whenever people appeal to his destiny, they do it. So why is he the chosen? I don't even want to say the chosen one. Why is he the one whom everybody is choosing to go on this mission already and to stay with the cause? And I think the answer in every case is because he's good at it. Yeah. He's competent, and whenever we see him in action, in disguise, solving problems, he's really good at it. He makes unlikely, surprising, good decisions in high stakes situations in short time. So he's just good at doing this. And that's why I'm still hesitant to call it really mysticism in that sense. And I'm hoping I don't have grounds to think that will happen. I don't have grounds to think it won't happen either. I'm hoping that the Force emerges as a sort of concept that gives us a new notion of destiny, where it's because none of these people have gotten visions that tell them Cassian is the one. You have to keep Cassian on board of the vision, on board of the mission. But they just are realistically motivated to have him be part of it. And I'm not sure what Cassian is struggling against, maybe, or what his stubbornness is. It's just like this urge to not be controlled by anything. And I think that possibly just his vision or his sense of his own free will is probably misinformed, or there's some impatience there. I don't want to be controlled by anything. And so now Bix, whom he does love, still also is this sort of symbol, and she stands for him not being controlled by anything. He chose her, and now he wants to go on choosing her. So I don't think that. Yeah, I would hesitate to use the term mysticism quite yet. And I'm curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, fair enough. what I do, I want to. I love that you're pointing out that these everybody trusts him because he's been so good at things. And one of the thing the Force healer said that caught me is to describe, because what we're getting, uh, I the thing I love about season one is seeing the development of a character from making one choice at the beginning to making a different choice at the end. So it's a very different kind of. I think it's not, for me. It's not okay, clear and overt. Boom, the hand of God is upon you. No, we're seeing his development. It's very, for me, very realistic. The way he grows, the way he's inspired by others, the things that he starts to realize of himself. It's deeply psychological, and that the Force healer captures that for me when she describes, when she thanks him. You got the thanking there. Thanks him for the clarity, because she says most people I encounter, they are shaped by their past. Their suffering, their pain, their need holds on to them. But what I see in you is somebody, and I don't have the phrase handy. I think it's somebody who gathers spiritual currency or something like that as they go along, that they're not restrained by their past, but that they are growing. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's true. It's like, yes, it's true, because I've seen that, and all these episodes. I've seen the growth of Cassian, and that does make him special, and that does make him different. And maybe that makes him different from Cyril, and especially maybe as a contrast, but that's a question for something else. So I feel like the mysticism is not driving the story, but it's like, oh, here's what happened. And in retrospect, these three characters are looking back at Cassian's journey, the one that I experience as like romanticism, free will, character making choices, realistically developing some ideals that they implement in reality. I'm seeing that develop, and then kind of, huh, isn't it funny that you've been in all these places all these times, that you came out of it and you've grown from that and you've come out of it. And Cassian, and the final conflict with Bix, and he tells Bix, when Bix is just silent as he's telling her that I want to go away with you, he tells her, I'm not special. I've only been very lucky. And I've overplayed my hand, but I'm not special. And Bix believes he's special. So, and that's why she leaves him. She says, I'm got to make the choice for the both of us. I'm leaving because I believe you have a higher purpose. So, if not like mysticism is present in the metaphysics of the universe and driving Cassian's actions, there are characters who are seeing that. And Bix is the main one. Bix is seeing, I need to extricate myself because his need is for me. And, well, he cannot fulfill what is his important job of winning this war, helping to win this war if I am around. So I'm going to choose for the both of us. I'm going to leave. Mm-hmm. But she does believe that he has a higher calling, that he has a destiny, right?
Yeah, I see that. I think I'm hoping that Force ends up being just not some unprovable whimsical thing, but just the highest level description of all that we've been talking about people choosing, about people growing, about people gathering. And sometimes we resist the highest level conclusion of who we are based on our choices, because we have some other impulses or impatiencies. Yeah.
Okay, great. Shall we go to, you want to go to Cyril or Mon Mothma?
I want to go to Cyril.
Okay, and then this will be a great comparison to Cassian, because watching the episode the second time, I was realizing, whoa, this is like the ending of this dual character arc that we've been seeing throughout the season, Cyril versus Cassian. Okay, so here are the questions I had. So first I was confused. Why did Cyril turn on Dedra? Why did he turn on her? Why is he choking her like that? Why does he say good luck and leaves? Then then this is a I wish I could get in Cyril's mind or get some more dialogue. So what is going through Cyril's mind in his final minutes of life? And there are three parts to it. He leaves the safety of the ISB building and goes in the middle of the crowd. And in the middle of the crowd, that's when the massacre starts. So I want to know, in the middle of this crowd, as he's observing all this, what's going through his mind as he's seeing the massacre? And then what goes through his mind when he sees Cassian? And then finally, what's going through his mind in his final moments when Cassian is like, who are you? Why are you? And my lines, why are you attacking me? Yeah, don't look imperial. Okay. So, and then the question that I'm very curious to explore more, I'd love to see like what is different about the the life of Cyril and Cassian? How are they juxtaposed with each other, both in their personal relationships and in their commitment to a certain cause? So wherever you want to go with Cyril, dive in.
Yeah, I was also surprised at his anger. So I was first of all just thrilled by him attacking Dedra. For many reasons, it was a theatrical moment. Everyone wants to see Dedra attacked, and it was surprising. But then I thought, where is this coming from? So you were talking about dual character arcs, and I'm almost hesitant to say that because we saw so much development and challenge, and yeah, characterological development for Cassian. And for long stretches, I thought that Cyril was driven by certain motives and had certain yeah, patterns of character, but he was far less deep,
Mhm.
into my view. And yeah, for some moments seemed just a caricature, not in a negative way. Like it was valid aesthetically to have him be that, but to really compare him and Cassian as characters, it really, yeah, I think it's valid, but it wouldn't have been before. It wouldn't have crossed my mind before. And at first I thought, okay, so the most obvious reason for him being so angry at Dedra might have been that he realizes he's been used. She had this whole larger agenda. She knew why they were on Gorman, and he thought that they were just using it to bait outside rebels. And he didn't know anything about this mining thing, so it might have just been a jab at his vanity that he didn't know
Mhm.
what was going on, and he feels. I mean, he's been dominated by Dedra and their relationship throughout, but now this becomes just really, really clear that she had this higher intention and he wasn't let in on it. And so maybe that's why he's angry. Um, at a certain point, also he confronts or he talks with Enza,
Yeah.
with one of the Gore women, and he
Yeah.
explains to her like he's still on this we're just baiting outsiders premise. And that surprised me. I thought, like, why does he care about her? Maybe what's driving him to be so angry, maybe that was like a connection to the Gore. Like, is he sentimental now or moral? But that seemed unlikely as well. And really, the question, who are you? So later on, when right before he's shot, I see that as a gentle indication by the screenwriter, um, as to what's really going on, and there's other moments that I think then might support that as well. That really maybe what's going on is that this having been used that way really provokes some sort of identity crisis. Like, who is he? Like he's been devoted to the empire, and the empire has just used him as a pawn, as yeah, a chip in some larger, yeah, just a part of some larger scheme. And maybe it's this sort of crisis of character, of identity that causes his anger at Dedra. That's my thinking. And so when he walks through the Gore people and he sees everything happening around him, I think almost like I'd be surprised if what was on his mind there is, oh, look at all these people and I've caused harm to them because he's been working for the Empire all his life. He hasn't been blind to the violence that the empire is capable of. I think it's more like I didn't predict this. Like this is what I was doing all along. I thought I was doing some other thing. And he might be just surprised and alienated from himself primarily. And I really, yeah, I doubt that there's a big moral change there, or it wouldn't really fit with the fact that he's been working for the Empire all these years. I mean, Empire employees aren't, or officers aren't lied to about what the Empire really does. It's quite clear that it's a violent state operation. Yeah, so that's I don't know. So the one question of yours that I'm also wondering at is what's going through his mind when he sees Cassian, and Cassian is aiming at Dedra. Does he know who he is, first of all? Does that trigger his identity crisis somehow more strongly, or is it the fact that he's aiming at Dedra, or just that he wants to now do something? I'm not sure what's going on there.
Okay. Oh,
That would be, yeah,
yeah,
that would deserve
lovely
some
thoughts.
more precise
Yeah.
study.
Yeah, I've got thoughts on each of those that have developed. I really like the term you use, identity crisis, to describe him as there. And this is one of those moments that, okay, there's a lot of exposition that is quick and things have evolved. Looking back on it, we get some hints of it in the previous arc of episodes. I think that there is some sympathy that he has for the Gormans. Um, the way that Enza slaps him suggests there is a breach of trust, and the way that he reacts to the slap, that he's pained that he hurt Enza. Now, why does he have? Is it because he's sympathetic to their cause? And this is trying to think about this, and I think I've formulated my thoughts here. I don't think he's sympathetic to their cause. I think he's sympathetic to them, and I think he's been seeing his job going back from to the very beginning, because I don't know. There's one thing you said I'm not quite sure of. How much does he know about what the Empire does? I think he's a believer in the goodness of the Empire. I think he's a believer in the goodness of the Empire. I'll come back to that. But I think what he believes he's doing on Gorman is preserving peace and order and making sure that these groups, these political groups on Gorman, don't go too far and get involved with the really terrible elements of the galaxy, the outside agitators, the Cassians, the Luthans, the Axis, and that when he goes to Enza, he says, "Just give me something on the outside agitators, and we can calm this down." Because I think he's developed a bond that he's helping them and helping preserve order, and that he's the true enemy are those that want to infiltrate the Gorman front. Now, I was trying to think to myself, what does he know about the horrors of the Empire? And in some ways, I don't think we have been seeing a lot of the horrors of the Empire that we would think of as, genocide and extermination. So that when Mon Mothma's speech comes in and she says genocide, it blows things up. We know that the Empire is capable of this from everything we know about the Empire from all our Star Wars experience, and we've seen it kind of to some extent. But even, for example, in Aldhani, that's kind of couched in, well, we're relocating. We gave them another town and they kind of like it over there. They're in manufacturing jobs. The old ways are dying. Even on Ferrix is like we're kind of negotiating the funeral arrangements. And even though we're kind of have our presence here and it's a heavily police state, we're still kind of embedded in the community. And what happens there is because some kid threw a bomb, so that we have had the subtle implementation of control by the Empire. And if you were, like Marva mentions, if you were asleep, it starts to fester. But people have been happy to be asleep and kind of let it fester. And what Cyril is witness to, I think this is the first time he is witness to the Empire is the one responsible for creating disorder and chaos and murdering. And I think that's the first time he's noticing that. I've been trying to preserve order, justice. Oh, so I went back and because there's that short speech that he gives to Dedra when he's been stalking her about why he's been stalking her, why she's rejuvenated his desire to live, because after the Ferrex thing, he sees himself as a failure. He went over the top of his commanders, not because he wanted to advance in his career, but because he truly believed that this is right. And Cassian needs to be destroyed. He murdered in cold blood 2 corpo officers. We need to get him. My commanding officer is just like lazing about. No, he's passionate for what he calls justice. And the lines that he has to Dedra, he says, "I thought I'd ruined my life with Ferrex. Just being in your presence, Dedra, I've realized that life is worth living. I realized that if nothing else, there is justice and beauty in the galaxy. And now it's just on me. Now it just clicked. I just had one of those clicking moments. Now I'm remembering the way he's at her throat. Because what he's seen from Dedra is the opposite of justice and beauty in the galaxy. It's not just his vanity that's been hurt. You have shattered what mattered to me most. This view that there is honor in the world and that you are my representative of it. And so now it's making sense to me. The line that really cuts things off between Dedra and Cyril, when after she says, "Don't lie to me. Don't say it's a rumor. Tell me the truth of what's happening." Dedra is trying to justify it and saying, we can be together. And then she says the line that makes him break off. And the line is, "You didn't complain about the promotions." And he just turns away and says, "Good luck," and leaves. And I was kind of fascinated, confused by, but now I think it's clicking. It's because Dedra's fundamental motivation, or the way that she's seen Cyril, is as somebody who simply wants to advance in his career. And that's not the case. Cyril is somebody who has a particular vision for what the galaxy should be, what law and order should be. And that has been shattered by the one that he thought was the best representative of it.
Oof. I feel, wow, your explanation just was like a mini, if not a symphony, like a sonnet at least. That really ties it together and is very convincing. So still one question remains: what is going through his mind when he sees Cassian?
Yeah.
Also, just like on a formal level, like how much does he know about him? What does he know about what he's seeing? Is this just
I think he absolutely recognizes him
agitator?
immediately. Because I remember a scene kind of early on in
For their
season
hologram.
1. Yeah, he has it in his room and he stares at it.
Yeah.
So he sees Dedra as the anti-Cassian. And I think what's happening is, okay, maybe I don't think he's noticing that Cassian is aiming at Dedra. I don't think he's seen that. I just think he's recognizing Cassian. And in this moment, I like that identity crisis. He's in the middle of the plaza. Is like he leaves the ISB. He can't go to the Gormans. He's stuck in between with a chaos all around him, a chaos that he's been party to creating. The breakdown of this law and order, the passion for justice that he has. And now he sees the person who has been the representative of that all his life.
Mm.
And the instinct is, I need to destroy that. It's rage. The rage coming from a place that's deep down has been animating him the whole time. But it's also not one that is on solid footing. I think it's just emotional because then when he has the opportunity to kill Cassian, there is no righteous killing. Like, take that, you vile scum. No, he is no longer on a footing. I think he realizes, like, who are you? Is when that question is asked, is like, all right, yeah, who am I? I
Mm.
do I still have the same kind of moral certainty that drove me so passionately to want to destroy you and to want to kill you now?
Mm.
And he doesn't. And his life is over.
Mm. It will be so fun to rewatch this after this discussion. I have another question
Yeah.
about Dedra and Cyril, and they're from Dedra's side. What's Dedra's motivate? How do we understand her as a character now? So she saw him just as someone who wants to go who wants to get the next promotion, who wants the next career thing. And this is something that Cyril is noticing, that it wasn't
Yeah.
about honor for her either, that his ideal has crashed there. Uh, but ultimately she wanted them to be together. So there's again this element of wanting to have a connection to someone,
Yeah.
and that as a primary that goes above justice, above their version of the rebellion, above their cause, and it doesn't work out. That's not how things play out in the story. She gets choked and loses Cyril.
So I don't know. I don't know. She had a breakdown, didn't she? The way she clawed at her collar, the hand that we've seen occasionally twitch,
At the end, the shaking,
the
yeah,
shaking, and she's gripping it. But she also kind of stands up and tugs down on her uniform to kind of straighten it. So I think she had. I think she. I'm wondering about her deeper motivation. What's her deeper motivation? Is it something sadistic, like let me torture the Bixes of the world? And I'm wondering if a big part of her motivation has been to, like, I want to make the best life for myself. I started off as, without parents, and I want to move forward and advance in my career and do my best with that. Um, so I don't know. I think she mourns. She's angry. She feels remorseful and guilt for what happened um, to Cyril and for her role in it when she says proceed in delivering the order to basically start the massacre. It's a tortured proceed. It's definitely not like the Captain Kaida, whoever that guy is, who comes in as a crisis management, who's got like the smirk on his face and a scar on his cheek as he wants to see death. I think she's got her limits, but I am going to be very curious to see where she is in the next batch of episodes. What has become of her? Has she become even more dedicated to the destruction of the rebellion, or is she carrying around with her what might have been with Cyril, or the guilt and remorse of
yeah.
what
That's
she did?
Yeah, that's one of the, as you said, like when we start a new batch, we are like learning machines at the very beginning. We're doing all this exposition that's presented so subtly, and this is one of the big leaps that I'm really excited to take. Just seeing Dedra in a new context and figuring out how this has shaped her and where she's going now, and whether she's just become an even bigger
Yeah.
monster or whether the impact
Uh,
shaped her in a different way.
has she become a bigger monster? Okay. Well, speaking of monsters, That's what Mon Mothma reveals in her speech, who the real monster is. Shall we talk about Mon Mothma now?
Let's talk about Mon Mothma now.
So, the questions I have about Mon Mothma and her character arc. So we especially see her in that final episode, episode 9. We see her a little bit beforehand, but she's got her attendant that's been with her for 2 years since the wedding on Chandrila, and her assistant, personal assistant. I think Erskine is his name.
Mm.
And when Luthen approaches her and tells her that Erskine has been actually a plant by Luthen, that he's been reporting to Luthen for 2 years, uh, Mon is horrified at that. Horrified that Luthen has had such control over her, because she knows how much Luthen prioritizes the secrecy of the rebel cause of protecting sources, and the way that Tekolma was killed, because there was simply the threat that he might reveal something.
Mm.
And when she goes back to her apartment, or to, I guess it's the Senate offices, and she sees Erskine, she immediately says, "You're dismissed." And Erskine, I hope I'm saying his name right, I don't remember it, says something, I I did my best to protect you, or something like that, showing his allegiance to her. And she tells him, essentially, "You failed to protect me." And I wasn't quite sure what she meant by that. I mean, she's alive,
Mm.
she's still, thriving senator. So what did, for these 2 years, where Luthen says Erskine has protected you in ways you do not know, she tells Erskine, "You have failed to protect me." So that's one question. Now, going to Mon Mothma's speech. This is something that I did not get watching the episode, and I did not think about watching the episode. I'm on Facebook. I'm a part of so many Star Wars groups now. I just joined them, and so my feed is filled with stuff. And it fed me like a 15-second clip of an interview with Genevieve O'Reilly. And in that interview, she described, okay, how giving this speech, she had to be all alone because it's all green screens, and she's on this platform. And she like briefly mentioned about, she really wanted to nail the speech. And the thing that she said was, because it ties in all these other things, not just the political, but also the feelings about Luthen and maybe some other stuff. I don't remember the clip, maybe even Perrin, but other things besides the nature of the evil of the Empire. And so the
Mm.
question I have is, does Mon's speech about the danger of losing our focus of objective reality apply to more than just the propagandizing of the Empire? And that then I had like a little bit of a connection. I thought I saw what it is. Does it apply? Does her speech also apply to what Luthen is doing by, well, fostering a break with truth and reality, like he just did with having his Erskine lying to Mon Mothma for two
Mm.
years? Or that this is Luthen's modus operandi. We want to have double lives. We need double lives in order to make this work. But is Mon Mothma, as she's saying the speech, commenting not just on the Empire, but also maybe primarily on Luthen, your break with the truth is harmful?
Mm.
So that's another question. And then the third question I have is one we've talked about. Why is Mon so deeply thankful to Cassian at the safe house? So whichever question you're particularly interested in, have thoughts, please dive in.
Yeah, I think the second question, that's a complex one, and it gets into Luthen too. So Luthen seems so stark, and I always think he must also, just because of how Andor is written, there must be some one principle somehow at his face, somehow the one thing that ties him together as a character. And so far, I always get two sort of whenever we get some really deep insight into Luthen, it's one of two things. So on one hand, he's very quick, or not quick, but he doesn't hesitate to override connections to other people. So if two people are lovers, but they're worth more to him separately, then they will live separate lives as long as they're part of his cause. And and there's this whole social idea he has where it seems that the only connection that matters to him and that governs his actions is that people have to trust him. People just have to trust him as like he knows what's going on, and they have to be able to turn off the rest of their minds and follow him. And we get that also in in the dialogue that they have, that Mon and Luthen have
Yeah.
on, I think, the bridgeway while she's rehearsing her speech. And she says, "Let me guess, in the end, it's only you I can trust. Is that it?" And he confirms. He says, "Yes, tonight, yes." And so it seems like to employ your circle metaphor again, that he wants there to be only one circle and he's at the center and he holds the reins. And Mon says that that makes her more afraid of him than anything. So there's this thing about how people connect to each other, and but then there's also the lying, the fact that he's quick, or that again he doesn't hesitate to keep people in the dark about things because their purpose lies elsewhere, or to have Erskine lie to Mon that way, which is a terrible thing for Mon for anyone to be confronted with. That's something that Luthen caused, and so now it seems so for the majority of the whole of the season and the whole show, the question of connections has been more present, at least to me. I've noticed that more often. But yeah, now Mon's speech makes me think of that maybe this goes deeper. I'm not sure how to connect the two principles.
That's a good question.
And maybe or find some larger, different description of what's going on. So the almost cliche way would be to say, well, but love and our relationships are a fact that, and he's just blind to it, or but I don't know. That doesn't sound right. That sounds too abstract. But I was surprised. I was surprised by Mon Mothma's speech. I didn't expect it to take that abstract, a tone to.
What do you mean by that?
For her to talk about objective reality and truth, because that wasn't a theme that popped up too often. We heard it in the broadcast that Trina sends from Gorman, that the truth is really what matters now. And whenever people said, like, people need to know what's going on here, that were ways where it sort of flickered already. Came up in very small ways. But for her to really stress that point and talk about truth that way, that surprised me. And I wondered whether maybe I was missing some things that came before, or whether this was now just the time for that very abstract thought. So now we've seen enough to see where she's coming from, and for that not to just to be like esoteric, but really true.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think for me that statement was pretty clear in that through those 3 episodes about what she's going for, but I had a harder time like connecting it to earlier episodes, previous ones. So the first thing we see about Gorman in this episode arc, like, well, when Cassian is saying, "Hey, Wilmot, where were you?" It cuts to not the resistance fighters of Gorman, but the reporters at Gorman. Multiple reporters telling about how there's been another bombing in the naval yard by the Gorman terrorists. And what they're describing is a fabrication, that bombing was staged in order to make it seem like it was the Gorman front. But it's deliberately being fed to the media in order to create this narrative of, okay, here's what we want the galaxy to see. And that keeps going until with the way that the massacre is played out. So the moment when Captain Kaido gives the order to fire at will to his sniper on the rooftop, it's not to fire in the crowd, but to fire on their own soldier,
Mm.
to have the reason why he's like these green soldiers who don't know what they're doing is to spark this massacre and to have it be
Yeah.
something that was initiated by the Gormans, to create this narrative, to create this false story, to have everything
It's,
be a rumor. What? There are ships that are landing? No, they're mining ships from the Empire? No, 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 that's a rumor. And to sow this disinformation, and that it has been set up a little bit like in the very first episode of of this season with the Ministry of Enlightenment. Like, here's the propaganda that we're going to place about what the Gormans are like. These arrogant people, they're very much like they're spiders, and
mm.
that we see Edie's mom in later episodes pick up like, why are you in Gorman? This is a terrible place to be with my son. No, why did you go there? So we see the hints of that, the propagandizing, and we get the main action of the arc, the massacre at Gorman, being the way that the Empire is fabricating a story,
Mm.
and the need to break that fabrication coming with Mon Mothma's speech, and that's what when Drina's calling out on the radio, like, listen to us, tell people what's really going on here because nobody else is telling. Hers like broken radio signal is the one bit of truth that's coming out of Gorman. Everything else that gets to the Senate, and I love that little section of all these other senators who are describing, oh, well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a list of all the Imperial heroes who died there. And then this other guy is saying, well, it is an emergency because one of our own was in the plaza at Gorman from our own planet. And you will know how terrible that is an emergency when this happens. And this is horrific. And the Gormans are terrible. And so you're just getting this one story that is now, that I think, the primary tool of the Empire. So in the first season, the evil of the Empire was kind of it it was pushing it, but it was still kind of a negotiation with people. And maybe we're going to keep some things in subterfuge, like the Narkina thing. We need prisoners in order to build the Death Star for us.
Mm.
But it's still kind of, they're not very good at controlling the message. Like when word gets out that they're rotating prisoners, like they have to kill a bunch of people. But here now we see the Empire really using a powerful tool of we have to shape reality. And when we shape reality, everybody's going to be on board with the control that we implement on them. And that is what Mon in her speech, I think that's why one reason why she gets abstract. She's not talking simply about, okay, there's terrible propaganda. It's talking about our break with reality. I love the term that she uses, with objective reality has happened, and it's culminated here with what's going on in Gorman.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the rebels, that's what struck me as well as a little fact supporting what you're saying. In the beginning of episode 9, I noticed that like everyone's priority is that Mon can hold her speech and get out safely, that she is heard and continues to
Yeah.
be active and someone who can be vocal. And I thought how special, how rare to have, because this is a senator giving a speech on TV. Like, we're so used to just saying politicians and
Yeah.
what they say, and just to blatant, yeah, just to just devalue it, just see it as unimportant chatter. And for that to be the central priority of everyone, of rebels, of people with guns running around on a mission, is
Yeah.
for someone to hold a speech. That was such a profoundly idealistic and completely realistic moment there that I found, like, I want to figure out some way to remember that in a deeper way because it was very uplifting in a strange way as well.
Yeah, they're not getting Cassian to go rescue her now. Rescue
Yeah,
her after the speech.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And this maybe comes to the theme of her speech and Cassian's first encounter with her. I teased this earlier. The first words that he says to her, because I was wondering how is he going to get Mon Mothma to trust him, because she doesn't trust Luthen at this moment.
mm,
And the first thing that after Mon finishes the speech and comes out, the first thing he tells her is, "I was there at Gorman. I saw it."
mm,
And that kind of, I know what you're talking about. I know the truth too. And the first bond that they have is,
yeah,
we know what's really going on. I am with you. I know this. And then he tells her, tells her about Aldani and Vel, being close to Vel and things like that. And then he gives the
mm,
password. I have friends everywhere. But I
yeah.
think that first interaction, I loved it. They're both have their eyes open to the truth of what the Empire is doing.
Mm. I have a tiny comment there, and I'm not quite sure how to categorize it. So I also like so that first bond, I see that. However, when Cassian talks about like, yeah, I have friends everywhere, and he mentions Vel, Mon is still hesitant at that point. She says anyone could say
Yeah.
that, and I'm quite sure. I try to pay attention there. The moment where she is convinced by Cassian, someone she can trust,
Ah,
when he says none of these things. He doesn't, yeah, forget about Val even, forget about the code word, but he says, look, I know Luthen can be hard.
that's
Then
true.
they bond.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
She's like, okay,
Luthen
yeah,
can be
we're
difficult.
getting
I
it.
know Luthen can be difficult. But if he's right about this, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, which is in a way again a way where like this really actual connection between people gets the mission where it needs to be or to the next step.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was I thought such an interesting dialogue too. Just yeah, how they find each other there.
Okay, so we've got to wrap up soon. This
Yes.
has been so delightful. We're almost, I think, an hour and a half here. Um, but I do want to get to your quick thoughts on why is Mon so deeply thankful to Cassian at the safe house? You
Mm.
mentioned that was a kind of a recurring motif for you that you were noticing. So he gets back, they're back at the safe house. They make their plans to go each their own way. Um, Mon Mothma is going to be escorted by the Gold Squadron back to Yavin, and Cassian is going to take Wilmon back to Yavin and another ship to get a doctor. And then they've got a moment where they're alone. Cassian is going to get some coffee. He just knows where the cupboard is. And Mon says the words, "You know this place, or you're familiar with this place." And Cassian says, "Yeah, I lived here." And then there's a big pause. And Mon is saying, is struggling to come up with the right way to thank him. "I don't know how I can ever thank you." And it felt really oddly poignant and powerful. So curious what you saw in that and why that struck you as a memorable scene.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I think the whole escape, the whole exit from the Senate had some uh, interesting moments between Mon and
Mm.
Cassian, and that really also showed the contrast, which again is a moment where we finally see two characters interact who we've been following separately in completely different worlds, right? Cassian was out there shooting people, going, and Mon was in all these elevated social parties, all of that, and now we see them together. And yeah, Mon as a character, she's so important and she is a hero of this resistance. And what I like about her is that she still has some uneasiness, or there's something that shows that she isn't just, flaming sword hero. She has some almost like blank spots in her mind where she
Mm.
doesn't quite understand what she's doing. At some points, like I think it's quite in the beginning of season two, or maybe even no. might even still be season one, where Luthen tells her about something that he's used her money for, and she goes, "What? That's what this whole rebellion thing is?" And the scene where that really just is very concisely, yeah, presented is the escape, the exit from the Senate, where she just now gave this passionate speech about also the horrors that happened on Gorman. And then she sees Cassian kill the double agent, the girl or the woman who was a different part of a different escape exit squad
Mhm.
for Mon, and who was actually working with the Empire. And she sees Cassian just completely justly eliminate this woman, and she's distraught and she can't believe that she just witnessed a murder. And then later, when he kills her driver as well, she's shocked by this and the reality of it. And so I'm not sure whether I can connect this now to, as I've been trying to before, to these higher principles about circles and the theme, but just on a characterological level, I think her gratitude also made sense, and that also she notices that people like Cassian exist and that
Yeah.
they spend time in these safe houses. That's why I think it's good that it follows or makes sense. There's a reason that it follows right. That her gratitude follows her no yeah, finding out that he's lived here, which
Yeah.
seems like such an arbitrary fact, but I think Mon, who spent all her time so very much distant from the real gritty action of things, now comes to honor that and to see it, to be saved by it, first of all, and just to realize how real it is. So I'm not sure whether this exchange and her thanking him also works on other levels, also ties into the theme of the whole thing, and I'm sure it does. But this is the one explanation that I think also holds, and that I thought was especially moving, just
Yeah.
on
I
sort
like
of
that a lot.
observing the psychologies and the emotions of two people.
Yeah, and I like the way that you're connecting it back to their first encounters. That this is when Cassian says "Welcome to the rebellion" to her, and she's
Mm,
like, "What?"
exactly.
This is her initiation into what the rebellion has been doing.
Yeah.
She, when she sees, "Whoa, you just killed that girl." That's that's justified part of the rebellion, and she's processing that. This is the danger that she's in. These are the stakes that are happening, and I like that you point out she has gotten to know that Cassian has been doing this for such a long
Mm,
time, that he lived in a safe house, hidden from the world. She has been in the open, protected, and to some extent, hands off from the Empire. And there are those, the non Luthans, who she still kind of resists against, but those who have given up their life in order to fight, to subterfugely fight against the Empire. And she's recognizing that for the first time. She's kind of seen it with Vel, but Vel doesn't really share anything. But she sees it with this individual. So she's thanking him for
mm,
saving her life, but thanking him also for everything that he's done over the years that is she is now a full part of
yeah.
and that she hasn't really been aware of. Yeah. So okay, that's making sense about the why there are so many lines of dialogue in this show where you think that didn't quite explain everything, but give it some thought and everything is already there. And maybe this is the show that in my lifetime is the most rewatchable.
Mm.
People say I notice new things when I watch the show, a movie again, or I notice new things. No, no, no. I'm not noticing new things. I am seeing the story in new light.
Yeah,
Um,
you're re-understanding as you're watching it. Yeah.
yeah. So just let's wrap up real quick with anything that you're especially looking for or wondering
Mm.
about in the last three episodes, in the climax of the show. You
Hmm.
mentioned a little bit about Dedra and how she might turn out. Is she going to be
Yeah.
broken, or is she going to be more of a monster? What more?
That's definitely that's also one thing I had written down as a question to remember when I started watching the next two episodes. Another one of the most elusive sort of exposition and like big picture dynamics that we only get indicated whenever we hop to a new year, is the tensions within the rebellion. So Luthen versus the rest, and now suddenly people don't like Luthen anymore, and even just finding out that someone works for Luthen is like, oh, how could yeah.
When I love the
Um,
line when Luthen when Cassian tells him you can still come back to Yavin, you haven't burned down all the bridges, and
mm.
Luthen says that's going to end today.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see how the yeah, what next time when we jump into a new year, what shape the rebellion will be in, and particularly Luthen's role versus the role of the rest. That's something I will be looking to analyze real or to yeah get a sense of real quick. And that's just also interesting again, looking at Tony Gilroy, someone who's studied history and who I think takes special care in crafting these dynamics in a realistic but also thematic way. So I'm interested to see what new structure we see there. Um, then I have some small things like I am interested what this droid who just pops
Mm,
up in the
mhm,
last scene,
mhm.
what's up there? Because that was a curve I had not
Mhm.
expected at all. This
Yeah.
droid who comes up, what was it? Is it still even the season where he was where that droid was with them? Um, yeah, and then on a deeper level. I wonder what will motivate Cassian to fight on. Will he now just try to find Bix? So is he still set on I want Bix and that's what I want and I don't want this rebellion thing. So now so that's like the one end of the spectrum is now I want to find the girl and bring her to some place where the Empire can touch us again. uh, and then the other end is that this that Bix having made that choice actually sparks some deeper ideological change within him, and he reevaluates the empire or the mission, the rebellion, and its importance to him. And yeah, the him as the messenger. Yeah, and I'm curious to see where he will start and yeah, where we will meet him in a year on that front, on that line.
Yeah,
Those are like the
I
things.
think I'm very much with you on the Cassian front. How is he going to process the the forced destiny that
Yeah.
has been put upon him because he hasn't made a choice. It's Bix who's left. And now,
Yeah.
was he going to just by default be with the rebellion? It seems like it, but will that conflict within him come back up between the what people think he should do and being part of the rebellion, that he has a purpose in it, and this need for agency, or what that is exactly, or this need
Mm.
that I need to be able to decide what to do when I want to. So what how is that conflict within him going to manifest itself? Is it, or is it now going to be like addressed and it's done because Bix has made the choice for them? So I'm curious if that's going to be brought back up. Luthen, he's I think he knows his destiny. He's gonna he's gonna fulfill. He's gonna hang. But what is he gonna make burn brightly before he hangs? Uh,
Mm.
I'm I want to see that. I'm so curious about that. And Clea might be the strongest of all the rebel characters. Maybe Luthen has suffered more, but Clea is the one who's held people together the most.
Mm.
Um, so I'm curious to see if what role she plays in keeping the rebellion going, and especially like you were mentioning, like you've got these two factions. You've got the espionage rebellion or the sabotage rebellion, and then the army rebellion. And well, how are they going to play out with each other? What's going to take precedence? It sounds like the army rebellion is not ready yet, and the espionage rebellion is still going on, but it's becoming more and more dangerous to do that.
Mm.
All right. So last words, Daphne, before we stop and wait for a few days before the next episodes come.
This was fun. This was musical, and intense and colorful. And I'm now, yeah, I didn't think I could look forward to the next episodes more than I already did, but now I do.
All right.
So thanks for this conversation, Luke. This was really wonderful.
Thank you, Daphne. It's so enlightening, and it's also in these. This is why I'm doing the podcast. This podcast, it's because it's a forum for me to have a conversation, for me to relish and enjoy the show, to have these clicking moments come as we gather our thoughts together in a circle to see the truth more clearly. All right, Daphne, thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. And please feel free to share your thoughts and comments. I think I might do another episode before the final batch, kind of looking at the arcs of the characters in the entire show, and then getting a little bit more in depth in the kinds of questions to ask about what would happen in the climax of Andor season 2. Goodbye, everyone.